Landmarks Commission meeting, the September 7th. I'd like to verify this evening that we do have a quorum for this meeting because I was able to get out of Burning Man alive. I escape. Commissioner Vela will be timing. If you wish to have testimony this evening, the standard protocol is 2 minutes. And if you'd like to speak about something, you need to fill out one of these cards, and they're out by the front door. So I call this meeting to order this evening. And just to review some procedures, like I said, you have to submit a comment on here because we keep records of all of these. And so we ask for your address, and then you can speak about issues this evening. And for those of you that have not attended a commission meeting before, you are welcome to talk any hoodle. Need to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Can I have any comments about those? Do we have any corrections, additions? All right, can I have a motion, please?
I'll move to approve.
Great. And Michael has made the motion. Who is seconding? Second?
I second.
All right then. So we have a motion with a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
And just confirming, by the way, that the quorum, we have myself, Mike, Amanda, Michael, and Emily. Groovy. All right. Do we have a report of the chair or vice chair? This chair does not. Report of the director. She appeared.
Guess what? I have a report today.
Please.
I have a report today. Can you hear that? I do. And we're glad that you made it out of Burning Man.
Thank
We were
you.
Watching Apple News.
We are more
Looking for
than
you.
happy to be out. We can't hear you, so please.
Okay, I'm going to get right in there. A couple things. I probably mentioned that we had an RFP out that has closed for a historic preservation consultant to help us systematically go district by district and conduct a reconnaissance level survey and update National Register nominations based on those findings. So we will keep you updated, but that RFP closed. We did have some offers that would like the job. Yay. That's always the thing when you have an RFP out. Please, someone. So we're happy with that. Unfortunately, there was a fire, which you've probably seen, the pink house on 3rd South. Yes, 666 East 3rd South. You know which one I'm talking about? Shoot. Okay. Right next to the former pizza with Papa Murphy's Pizza
that
on the
house.
corner
Yes.
of that house. Yes.
Did it burn down while I was gone?
It burned down, no. A
No?
couple weeks ago. And so there was an emergency demolition
Ah,
based on input from the fire department to the building official. So the building official does have the authority in that case
sure.
to issue an emergency demolition.
That is so interesting. I drove by that 2 weeks ago and said to myself, I wonder why that hasn't burned down. It's been vacant for so long. Well, that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
What was the history of that house? Do you know?
Well, I don't have that on me right now,
That's all right.
but
Yeah. Thank you for updating us on that.
yeah, so that's unfortunate. The H preservation overlay rewrite is in council's hands. We have the ordinance drafted, not an entire rewrite. So we're just waiting for that briefing, and we will let you know
Okay.
when that's scheduled with the council. We are recruiting more landmark commissioners. We need a couple more commissioners, so if you know someone great who's interested in preservation, please have them apply to the mayor's office. That's all that I have to report on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. General public comments. Anyone who wishes to make a comment on anything not related to hearings tonight. I only have 2 cards here. Is there anyone that wants to speak about anything? And Cindy, would you be that? Great. Cindy Cromer will be doing a general comment for us.
So I hope you all received some photographs that I took earlier today of the O.J. Salisbury Mansion, better known as the Irvin's Early Mortuary Building. It is on First South and 6th East in the Central City Historic District. And I have copies if any of you didn't get them electronically.
Yes, please. Could I have a copy?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. What are we doing? What's
You'll
bad?
see, this
I did
is,
put the pictures in Dropbox just for reference for the commission.
these are photographs of the south elevation, the rear of the building. And what you'll see is that an addition, which has been removed, was not chemically cleaned. I'm going to send them to the mayor so that she knows that air pollution is not a recent problem in Salt Lake. Based on my experience with my own house, I suspect that that's coal dust. There are paintings of Salt Lake buried in clouds of coal dust. Anyway, so I wanted you to see that. I also wanted to talk about the long vacancy because you all heard this case years ago and the building sat vacant and was vandalized during the shutdown. And so I'm very relieved at least there's some activity and there are contractors concerned about their tools being stolen to ensure security around the building. It is one of many, many vacant buildings in the Central City neighborhood. We have had 3 fires in buildings that I know of, and you just heard about one of them. That was the Covey House, the Pink House. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the foundation. So the O.J. Salisbury Mansion is a very prestigious building designed by Frederick Hale. I own his house. And look at the foundation in those pictures. Very substantial house and a sketchy foundation.
So what are you saying? Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble. When you approve a building being constructed next to a building of this vintage, which was built before there were required setbacks, you need to be very mindful about what's underground. That's what's underground. That's what I saw today. It's a sandstone rubble foundation.
Okay. Which my home inspectors say is great because it's porous, and then the other home inspector says it's bad because it's porous. What do we know? Thank you for that, Cindy. Okay, so let's go ahead and open the public hearing now. First hearing, Beehive and Lion House major alterations at approximately 6-3 and 6-7 East South Temple. And let's see, who is going to be presenting this? Stephen Cornell?
Stephen Cornell,
Great.
right over there. So,
All right. First, our boss is going to explain this, and then you can come up.
and I'm
then we'll
not
have
really
public
going to say,
comments.
I'm not going to say too much other than we are recommending approval. We've been working with Steve and a number of others on this project for a while now, and they've been walking us through all of their findings for about a year or longer. So we're recommending approval. We think that their changes are appropriate, and he'll get into all the details of that. We've issued a minor alteration, and we're focusing on the major alterations on the site. The minor alteration that we approved administratively was really just to grub and scrape the site for the landscaping and start excavating next to the foundations to do that repair. But tonight you get those major alterations where we just have one condition recommending approval with final conditions be delegated to staff. Final details, louder. Final details be delegated to staff, like AKA some street, whether they remove street trees, a couple final details that they're working with the urban forester on, and anything else that comes up. So thank you.
So let's have Mr. Cornell of FFKR Architects, who's representing the property owner, which, if you don't know, the property owner is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So welcome,
Thank
you
you.
and other people.
Thank
Would
you.
you like to introduce your other peoples?
Yes, so I've got Spencer Hutchings with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with us to my left, and Mark Morris, our landscape architect, as well. So we'll all be having a
Great.
brief
So talk
presentation
almost
tonight.
right into the thing.
right into it.
Can you make
On.
sure that microphone is on? There should be a green light.
Yeah, it should be on. I just need to get closer. So.
Uh-huh.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Ah.
So I'm going to let Spencer start out.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity tonight. Just wanted to kind of give an overview of why we are looking at doing this project right now. Am I loud? Am I close enough? Okay. So over the year, oh, sorry.
Are you going to be sharing your presentation?
Yeah, do you have
while
photos?
you do your.
I don't, but he does. So
Yes, please. I'm a visual person. I will never understand what you're talking about unless I can see it.
I'm gonna need your help on this one.
Uh-oh. Now the boss is involved.
How to run this.
Do 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 do. Uh-oh. Now the little boss is involved. Do do do. Click. Yay! That's a great old picture. Wow. And are those are for horses, right? All those little pylons.
hitching posts.
Hitching posts, yep.
Okay. Thanks. So just kind of to give an overview from the owner standpoint of this, over the years there has been we've become concerned with the structural, some of the structural elements within the buildings, some of the footings and foundations. We're going in at this point in time. The underground, we're looking at repointing those footings and foundations, but we have some other concerns that we're looking at. So the structural stabilization, not a seismic upgrade, but a structural stabilization, is really what's led to the project at this point in time. At the same time, we want to update aging MEP systems that are quite old. The last major update to this building was in the 1960s, so it's been a while. Additionally, with the onset of COVID a few years ago, the Lion House pantry and the hosting functions that happened in the Lion House were stopped, and we've made the decision to shift the usage of this building from a hosting center to a museum. And so we're going to be focusing on converting the Lion House into a museum experience for patrons, as well as and as part of that, it's improving the accessibility and restoring all of the buildings to look to be much more reflective of the Brigham Young era when he lived there. So that is a pretty broad general overview of the project and why we're looking at doing it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. What is the foundation? Is it sandstone?
Sandstone.
Okay. Good or bad?
It's very, very strong, over 15,000 psi. So
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
By any chance, were you doing this because maybe the whole block is going to be going through this, of all the historic?
so seeing as how the couple blocks around the area are also undergoing things at this point in time, the goal is to have this done.
Might as well do it all.
I think that might be part of it, but we are really changing. Really, a lot of it has come down to we are changing the function of it. It's shifting from that Lion House pantry where you could get those delicious rolls.
No.
That will
Oh, no.
the rolls will still be available, but they will be in the JSMB. They're still available. They're just in a different part of the campus. Okay.
Okay.
So, but so we've changed from hosting to a museum.
Nice.
So it's shifting to church history department handling this as a historic site.
Wow.
So
That's going to be interesting. Great. Thank you. All right. Let's hear about landscaping.
Well, first we're going to hear about architecture.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but that's just the way the presentation is set up. So
We love that too.
So we've got some underlying goals, preservation approaches to the site. Like Spencer said, we're restoring a major portion of the site back to the 1850s to 1870s era, which is the Brigham Young era. We're restoring parts of the building back to the Joseph F. Smith and Lorenzo Snow eras. And part of the building, because it's an important story of this site, part of the building will be restored back to the boarding house function from the 1910s to the 1940s. Just to orient you, the Lion House is on the left. The offices, both the Territorial Governor's Office and the President's Office, are in the middle, and the Beehive House is on the right. And some of the things that we're looking at that have been removed, and mostly the elements that have been removed were wood structures, wood elements. And so by the early part of the late 19th century, they had deteriorated and needed to be replaced. They were out of fashion at that point as well. But what we're looking at is, some of these elements that are no longer extant on the building, bringing those back. The stone hitching posts are still there in some fashion. Some of them have been replaced, but some of those original stone hitching posts are still in place. But this just
Carriage steps?
the carriage step is actually there on the east side, so we're going to integrate that in some fashion. Where it ends up, we're not quite sure, but that's going to be part of the.
I just wrote an article about all the carriage steps here in town.
Oh, you did?
There are not that many left.
Nope.
I'm glad you're saving that.
Yeah, that's
Thank
and it's got Brigham Young's initials on it, so it's
Even better.
it's kind of a cool one. So, as I was saying, by the early 20th century, a lot of those original elements had been replaced. You see cast iron balustrades replacing wood balustrades. Parapets had been removed. The stone wall had been removed. There was a cast stone facade on the Lion House because we think the stucco had been in disrepair by that point. So lots of changes took place in after the first 50 years of this building's life. And again, just to orient you, these are some of our isometric renderings of the site. This is looking to the southwest. The Beehive House is on the left. The Lion House is on the right. Offices are in the center. And what we're proposing to do is outlined here in blue. You've all seen this, but we're proposing to bring back some of these features that were original to the 1850s era up until 1877 when Brigham Young died. So you have some parapets on the Beehive House, a balustrade on the back of the north addition. We're proposing to finish out the stair addition that was put on in the 1960s on the north side of the Lion House, and just make that a bit more pleasing from that side of the site. The big element here that we're talking about is what's called either the long hallway or the crooked hallway. The crooked hallway is crooked because it has a crook in it, and that's how it was built. Originally, it was built as a one-story portion of the 1850s construction. It was really a circulation building to allow circulation behind and through the offices and into the Lion and Beehive House. In the 1860s, a second story was added onto that. It was sort of scabbed on. It was a wood frame construction, not really high architecture, but it served a very important function, and that was to connect the Lion House with the Beehive House on the second level. This is again the existing condition of the site looking to the southeast. And this is just a view of those features again that we're planning to restore. From the looking to the northwest, and again those features. And from the, I'm really having to think about my directions here. From the, looking to the northeast, and again how those additions changes would appear. Yeah, one thing you're seeing on this rendering is in right adjacent to that crooked hallway addition is the boarding house addition, and these were basically two bedrooms that were built probably around 1910 when the boarding house function was installed in the buildings. These are again kind of not high architecture, but just kind of scabbed on wood frame structures, but we're proposing to bring those back and replicate those based on photographic documentation and a really actually good survey that was done by the Habs in 1934. So they documented the building in 1934. these buildings were part of that building at the time. And so we have really good documentation, measured drawings, elevations of what those buildings look like. So with that information, we feel like we have enough information to replicate those in such a way that it really is a useful interpretation tool for what the
Who were they
client
boarding?
wants to do. What's that?
Who were they boarding?
Young women. It was part of the Young Women's Mutual Improvement Association.
Oh,
So the whole, the north side of the Lion or the Beehive House was really kind of dedicated to the boarding house functions. Yeah, and it's again not one of the stories that you really know about this complex.
no.
So that's we're trying to expand the story, talk more about the full history of the site rather than just focus on Brigham Young. It's got a long and lengthy history.
So will you turn that into a museum as a boarding house?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the Lion House, how many bedrooms does that have?
It had a lot of bedrooms.
Uh-huh.
The basement level was more for service functions, kitchens, pantries, things like that. Main level was more common areas, parlors, etc. The second level was really dedicated to the bedrooms. And so we are restoring some of those back, and I'll show you those in the plan
Okay,
in just
great.
a minute. So.
Thank you.
And then just going through, these are the demolition drawings, and I say that with, with some distaste in my mouth. They're really selective demolition drawings. In some cases, we are doing structural demolition, and where we're doing structural demolition of wholesale parts of the buildings, you'll see that outlined in blue. Otherwise, it's just very selective, very surgical. This is the sub-basement area. This was all done in the 1960s. This is the basement. And so again, you see the existing crooked hallway areas being demolished in wholesale. The left half of the crooked hallway was replaced in the 1960s. The right half of that still dates to the 1850s. The second level of the crooked hallway was removed in now I can't remember the date, but it was removed I think in the 1920s. So it was removed fairly early on, but that original main level of the crooked hallway was still intact in the 1960s and it still is intact today.
Was it acting as a breezeway between the two buildings?
It's acting as a connector, yeah. When they redid it in the 1960s, they sort of cut off the two halves, and so it didn't work, it didn't function any longer as a pass-through.
Oh.
So you had to kind of come through and work your way around back into it. But really the basis of this project is to provide accessibility to the buildings. And to do that, the crooked hallway needs to be rebuilt so that we can navigate and mitigate all those varying elevation changes throughout the buildings. There's different elevations on each level throughout all the buildings. And so this new construction, this new reconstruction of the crooked hallway is really leveling the playing field in a sense. It's bringing all of those different elevations together so that we have, accessibility throughout the buildings on the basement, main, and second levels.
So it seems like the second story of the crooked hallway is visible from the street.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll show you those elevations in just one moment. We're not doing a whole lot on the third level of the Beehive House. This is really where the mechanical systems are going to be placed so that we can serve those second level spaces from above. But again, we're not doing anything to undermine those existing conditions. We're just sort of fitting mechanical systems in. This is where mechanical systems are currently placed in the Beehive House, but we're just upgrading the system at this time. And demolition elevation drawings, the items in red are what we're either demolishing or removing and salvaging and reinstalling as we go through this process. The porch columns there on the Beehive House on the lower image, in the report we've outlined that there is no structure in those porch columns, so we're going to shore up the porch, pull off those columns, put an actual structure in the columns, and then reapply that trim that we've taken off.
Are they like ZCMI? Were they made out of iron? No, okay.
What's that?
One by material,
Oh,
one by wood.
okay.
So the stair on the north side of the Lion House, that exterior egress stair is going to be demolished, even though it's just built, and we'll kind of fill in that right half of the stair addition. As I said, the existing crooked hallway in its sort of hybrid configuration, 1960s, 1850s, is going to be demolished. This is the west elevation of the Lion House on top and the east elevation of the Beehive House on the bottom. And again, it's a very selective approach to what we're demolishing, removing, and replacing. I should note quickly, we are removing all of the stucco on the buildings. And that's because the stucco was redone in the 1960s. It's a very hard stucco. It does not allow the adobe units that are making up the wall construction to breathe. We know that there's damage in the adobe behind this new stucco, 1960s era stucco. So we want to take that stucco off. We've engaged Abstract Masonry, who's one of the premier masonry contractors in the state and really in the region, to really help us identify what the process is to restore adobe. So if we find adobe units that are deteriorating or damaged, we're actually replicating new adobes based on the compositional analysis that we're doing on the adobes.
So it won't have stucco?
It will have stucco. We're going to put stucco back on. It's going to be a lime-based stucco, and it's going to allow the units to breathe. If water gets in, the water can get back out.
Great, okay,
So-
thank you.
So we think that's the best approach. We don't want to trap water in the building, which is what it's doing now. If there's leaks, the water gets in, it stays in, and it just eats away at the adobe. So the proposed plans, this is, again, the areas outlined in blue are the new additions. We have the crooked hallway here. We're installing an elevator to facilitate access throughout the buildings. These are restorations of the bedrooms, the original ash pit, which was part of the sanitary system of the original construction. So there was an ash pit that was located outside. That's where all the refuse and trash and things like that went, burned in that ash pit. That's still there. We're going to restore that original shape of the ash pit. You see that kind of rounded corner, and that's all going to come back and be part of the new restoration. And again, the addition to the stair tower on the north. Main level just kind of follows the same plan. Again, ramps, elevator, mitigate those elevation changes, and that's all done in that crooked hallway. Same thing on the second floor. And this is just the third floor. You can see that there are very, very few changes, just mechanical systems in the Beehive House on the third floor. And these are, did I skip one? I just want to make sure I didn't skip one. Okay. And so this is the north elevation of the project looking to the south. So you see the backside of the crooked hallway. You see the stair addition on the Lion House, and you see the elements that we're restoring on the Beehive House. And on the bottom image, that's the south elevation looking north. So you can see what that crooked hallway is going to look like from South Temple. And I want to stop here for just a minute and talk about that. So from the South Temple side, we're restoring it as closely as we can determine from photographs. And really all we have is photographs of the crooked hallway. But we've got very good photographs. We've got aerial images. We've got, straight-on images of the South Temple facade. So we have a very good understanding of what that crooked hallway looked like originally. It was clad in wood. Like I said, it was just a frame structure. The new structure is going to be seismically isolated from the original building, so it will be kind of the safest part of the building. If you're going there and there's an earthquake, run to that hallway. You'll be safe. It'll be fine. But again, from the South Temple side, we're being consistent with with our approach on that, just like we're doing with some of those original features that were removed, like the Greek Revival parapets. That crooked hallway is a feature that we're restoring, and it will look just like it did in the 1850s. From the north, we're trying to give it the same language that the Beehive and Lion House have. We want to kind of tie it in, but it doesn't look like anything else in that north courtyard. It's got a lot of windows, so it looks modern. It's done in the same language as the Beehive and Lion House, so you've got double hung sash windows, top and bottom, and it's going to be clad in the same wood that the front side of the or the south side of the crooked hallway will be clad in. So everything else is going to be stucco. The crooked hallway will all be clad in probably a type of cementitious clapboard. It may not be wood, just because wood tends to deteriorate over time. So we want to do something that's a little more durable on this. But effectively, it will look like the wood clapboard that was there originally.
Do we have any specific rules about that? Could they use hardy board?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what he's speaking.
So we want this to be very accurate, right?
And again, yeah, from the South Temple side, it will look effectively as it did in the 1850s. And again, this is just a couple of more elevations. I do want to point out on the bottom elevation, the balustrade that's showing up there on the right side of the building. That was something that was built in the 1910s, 1920s. It was part of the Joseph F. Smith era of the buildings. So again, we're sort of, mixing different eras of interpretation in the buildings, but in order to kind of talk about the building construction history, that's what we have to do. Section through the long or the crooked hallway as it connects into the Beehive House. We're being very, very careful about how we connect that in. It's going to connect into a gable. That's where the entrance will be into the Lion House and into the crooked hallway. And with that, if there are any questions on the architecture, I'd be happy to take those now, or we can wait to the end. Otherwise, I'll let Mark talk about landscape.
Great. Do you want me to click through, or?
Yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
hard to navigate.
Great. My name is Mark Moritz. Can you hear me? My name is Mark Morris. I am a landscape architect with Voda Landscape and Planning. In 2015, we worked to develop a cultural landscape report for this complex, which is really documenting the landscape and trying to research what is historic, what periods of significance connected to the landscape are important. The short story is there is really nothing much there that is connected to the Brigham Young era as far as the landscape is concerned. There is one wellhead in the back on the north side that we think is the original location of the water source for the complex. The walls, all of the rubble walls, are really from the 1960s. The hitching posts on South Temple and the wellhead are probably the only things that would be considered historic landscape. So as part of this project, what we're really trying to do is create a landscape that is far more historically referential, but not necessarily a historic reproduction of the landscape. Brigham Young, as far as he's concerned, he would have recognized, a hard-packed dirt courtyard and not a lot of decorative landscape. To modern sensibilities, if we were to do that, that would be a very different experience. So with the design of the renovation of the complex, we've established a few key goals, really to create a far simpler landscape. The landscape that is out there today is very lush, it's beautiful, it's very water intensive, and it's also very maintenance intensive. The accessibility of the site is pretty dismal as far as accessibility goes for all users. The interpretation of the site, the visitor experience, really is going to begin out in the landscape. So planning that sequence for any visitors to the site really begins out there along the South Temple frontage.
Right there.
Can't even. I can see it. Okay. As far as the site plan goes, you may have deduced from Steve's elevations, there's quite a bit of elevation change on the site, which makes that accessibility pretty much impossible for anyone that utilizes wheelchair or other methods. So the materials that are out there in the landscape for the most part are from the 1960 renovation of the complex. A lot of it is in really rough shape, again, creating a lot of accessibility issues for visitors to the site. The site plan itself, we'll go through this pretty quickly, but what we're trying to do is create really easy access for all visitors, both to the main entrance, to the museum entrance, as well as into the courtyard on the north side. The changes that are being proposed for the complex are such that we can really rethink a lot of the elevations around the buildings. What that does is it gives us the opportunity to eliminate steps and stairs that are obstacles and creating an accessible route for all. Yep. On the north courtyard side, currently this site is completely inaccessible to anyone using a wheelchair or wheels. The access, maintenance access from South Temple is the only way for a wheelchair to get to that north courtyard. So with the changes to the elevations, we're able to make all entrances that are part of that experience accessible. We've got a few renderings here just to discuss materiality. This is kind of where we are in the design process, is determining what are the materials out in the landscape. As I mentioned, the intent is to create a far simpler landscape where we're using things like a decomposed granite that's going to make it feel a little bit more rustic, a little bit more residential. This particular site is far different from all of the other buildings on Temple Square in that it is a residential complex. And so creating something that feels like it's a little bit more at that scale is one of the design direction here.
So wouldn't it be surrounded by, as we say in Utah, fruit trees?
Sorry?
As we say in Utah, fruit trees. Wouldn't there be fruit trees and sago lilies all around?
One of the things that we are doing is we've kind of looked at different zones around the property to say, okay, there are places where very decorative landscape would be appropriate and that will remain. There are also other elements such as in the north side, historically there would have been a very large orchard when Brigham Young lived there. He actually had a little eagle tower. He had a pet eagle to keep his own children out of the orchard. We won't be rebuilding that eagle tower, but the very large orchard on the north side of the complex we're at least paying some homage to by having a little bit of fruit trees on that north side, just to say, you know, this was a residence. They were completely dependent on the food that they could produce, and here's a little bit of that message. As I mentioned, the removal of steps and stairs gives us a lot of options to create more accessible routes. The entrances along the South Temple frontage are not part of that entry sequence to the museum, so those steps are pretty much irrelevant to that accessible route into the main entry. The north side of the building, as I mentioned, the intent is to create something that feels rustic, but isn't necessarily trying to reproduce what Brigham Young would have recognized in his backyard. We've got a few things there, again, that are historic, using materials that would feel appropriate, connected to the buildings themselves that have these nice sandstone foundations. You can see the well pump there in the center. Again, that's really the only object on the site that would be considered connected to one of the periods of significance for the buildings. And a small kitchen garden area, again, to have a few referential things to communicate the residential nature of the buildings.
And again, this is just kind of the final slide in the presentation, but the stabilization of the structure is an important part of this project. It's not a seismic upgrade. We looked at doing a seismic upgrade, but that would undermine and destroy that historic fabric in the building. So that was deemed infeasible. We're looking to stabilize the structure, and that's really what we're doing. So stabilizing the foundation, stabilizing the adobe, repairing, framing members where we've got excessive snow loads, and we've got under framed roof structures. Like I said, introducing new structures in the porches so they actually have structure and they support themselves. Sheathing all the roofs, so enhancing the performance of the buildings if there were a seismic event. Enhancing life safety to, again, the buildings are going to have a lower intensive use. So, overall, the life safety of the buildings is going to be enhanced. And with the stabilization of the structure, that's something that's also playing into that. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I have a question. I know that water conservation is an ongoing discussion and is of prime importance. Can you address the landscaping material that's being chosen? Is it drought tolerant, or are we looking to conserve where we can?
The short answer, yes. What we've done is looked at what are plant palettes that we can use that will still feel lush and welcoming, but will also be far more water conserving. You couldn't have a landscape out there that uses more water than the landscape that's out there today. But what we're trying to do is create something, again, that feels appropriate to the house, but is far more water conserving.
Utah plants.
Indeed.
Sago lilies.
We will keep some hollyhocks because everyone has a
We love
sense that
those.
hollyhocks need to be at the Beehive House. We
Yes.
just maybe won't see quite as many.
Other questions?
A couple of comments and then a question. I thank you for the clarity of the drawings. It's very easy to see what's old, what's new, what's wanted. I think the modifications to the exterior elevations are not on the primary faces except for the porch along the south face, and I think that's good. The stair at the northwest is respectful of what the architecture looks like and feels like. My question is that it appears that the main entrances are going to be on the sides. You're coming from the east and the west into the courtyard, and then from the courtyard, that's where you're gaining access to the museum and other spaces. That the elevations to the south are almost ceremonial, not really real entrances.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
Yeah.
Street face south, right?
What's that?
Yeah.
The street faces south.
I understand, but it looks like everybody is coming in through the courtyard.
Yeah.
In-
The main entrance to the complex is going to be on that west side of the Lion House.
Okay, fair
There's an
enough.
accessible plaza there. Everything's on grade. So that's where the main entrance is going to be. But again, the site is going to be accessible. There's no stairs as you enter from the sidewalk through the gates to the site. Everything is going to be accessible into the site. And then
Okay.
in some cases too, the porches do have ramps to them. Like you can get up onto the Beehive House porch via a ramp on the east side. The east side entrance from the State Street side will be accessible as well. And then the courtyard obviously is going to have enhanced accessibility in and out of the building. So
And then the porch that you're adding on the south is basically going back to what used to be there. There was a porch
right.
and replicating
That's right.
what that looked like.
exactly, yeah.
Very well. Nicely done.
Any other questions? How long is the project going to take, do you think?
This is a great question. We are
Longer than the temple?
no, no. Sorry, that's a quick no on that one. We are looking at at concluding this project and having it open before the temple is ready for an open house.
Oh, yay, that's great.
So-
And that's a question I get all the time because I have to do a lot of city tours with people that are moving here. Is that lion, was that original to the structure?
That lion is not. I think the original lion is in the DUP museum.
Okay,
If
I
I'm not
believe that.
mistaken. This is a replica lion.
Okay,
So
nice.
Yeah.
Now I know. Great. I don't have any cards here or comments, and commissioners have asked, so go ahead and take your seats, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
Yeah. I love that we're planning for snow loads, so we're being really optimistic about global warming, and we're going to have snow. That's great. Did they have skylights back then?
Was that?
Did they have skylights back then?
No.
No, so
They had clear
that's a,
stories, but not real skylights.
that's a new thing.
Right.
Skylights. Okay, groovy. Okay, so do we have any folks from that want to make any comments? I didn't get any cards, so I'm assuming not. So I'm going to close. You do? You have to have a little card because I have to know your little name. Oh, I didn't know they were presenting. Well, you'd like to. All right. Are you Hugh Bunker? Tony Lama. No, Tony Romney. Here we are. Tony, I want your shoes. Okay. Okay, so Tony and Cleon, why don't you come up and talk about this just for fun? Sure. Why not?
Excuse me, Commissioner. The public comment has to be spoken to the item that's being heard right now, so he'll have to wait to make the second public comment for the local district once it's presented.
Uh-huh. Oh,
I think he meant with the card.
he's going to go with the card
I want to
here.
speak to this item right now. Okay, yes, okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Oh, this is so great. I'm getting a twofer tonight. Can you hear me all?
Yes. State your name.
Tony Romney.
Great.
I'm thrilled to hear that they're going to have the crooked hallway restored. This is wonderful. I'm an architectural
Nerd.
love nut nerd, call it whatever else. I would also ask if they could dedicate one room in this wonderful new museum to one of Brigham's wives.
Well, I'm thinking there's a ton of rooms dedicated.
Well, there are a bunch of them. I'm just asking for one. Her name was
Oh.
Zina Diantha Huntington
Okay,
Jacobs Smith Young.
okay.
That's the whole name. Just, it would be wonderful to accurately depict the architecture, but give the full story of that one wife. That's a good one.
Great, thank you for that comment. Gentlemen, do we have a kind of thumbs up from the audience on that one? 6 rooms dedicated to 6 wives. I love our history. It's just so precious. All right, Tony. Yes, a rich history is great. Okay, and let's see. So that was Tony for that. Tony, did Cleon want to talk about that? Okay, great. So we're going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, we talk amongst ourselves. We don't have anything to talk about, then we probably make a motion.
I have one thing I want to mention. I encountered a lot of issues with the PDF on the staff report on this one. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm getting a lot of like red boxes. So I just wanted, like, for the historical record, to make sure that that's displaying correctly in
Oh.
your files.
What you talking about?
A lot of like red boxes.
I have no red boxes.
Didn't have that on mine when I looked at it earlier, so.
Ironically, the youngest person on the commission is having the technology issues, but
Michael, is that on Dropbox or is that on the city website?
it's on Dropbox.
We'll take a look. Thank
Okay,
you
yeah.
for bringing that
Just
up.
wanna
And
make
if
sure.
there are any other things like that, please do bring them to our attention. Otherwise, we'd never know. Thank you.
I think the devil is making progress in his computer. That's what I say. We have a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve, based on the information presented and the discussion. I move that the commission approve the application based on the staff's recommendation, which includes the detailed conditions listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Perfect. We have a motion with a second. Do we have any discussion? If not, let's go ahead and vote. Mike?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Do I vote? Yeah, I'll vote. Yes. Okay. Passes. How would we say no? Come on. That was fabulous.
Nice work.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Maybe when you're done, can you have us all over for a little tour? Huh? I'm requesting that.
Yes, all right.
That'll be awesome. I can't wait.
I know.
Thank you, gentlemen. You do not have to stay for the rest of this. All right. Yay, woo. And that was all. Nobody ever mentioned the number of that, which was PLNHLC 2023000666, sign of the devil. We don't have to anymore? Really? I didn't get the memo, sorry, but I have kind of Burning Man head here, so, okay. Next on our agenda is, Yale Crest, Laird Heights, Local Historic District. We have a lot of power here tonight, don't we? All right, Kelly, property owner in the proposed Local Historic District, has submitted, Kelly McGaleer, has submitted a petition to designate a new historic district within the Yale Crest neighborhood of the city. So that's like a district within a district. The proposed boundaries of the Yale Crest Laird Heights Local Historic District are on Laird Avenue from 13th to 15th East, including the homes on Laird Circle and Uinta Circle. The proposed district is located in City Council District 6, represented by the one, the only, Dan Dugan. And Lex is with our staff, so Lex, have at it.
Thank you. Good evening. You've basically killed my whole presentation, so I'm just going to rip through this. Yes, this is a request for a local historic district initiated by a property owner within said district. This is not a city initiative. We recommend that you forward a recommendation to the City Council to approve the request. You will also be asked to approve some changes to the 2005 Yale Crest Reconnaissance Level Survey as was proposed in your staff report for several properties. This is a map of the city's national and local districts, so we are talking about a district right in this area where you can little cursor flicking about. There's the actual map. The proposed district is in orange. In the purple, there are several other districts that have already been established. And soon you will also be hearing from me about a local historic district for Princeton Avenue that was also submitted, and Aiden Lilly had been working on that prior to her departure. That's how inheritance works in the city.
Wait, before you go there, so we can have historic districts, just to clarify for the public, that we can have historic districts that are just a street, like a historic street.
A street, the minimum is a block face.
Ah,
Yes.
So
there we go. Okay.
this map demonstrates the Laird Heights local historic district that we're here to talk about this evening, but also shows the Princeton Heights, which you will see within the next couple of months.
There's a sign up on Yale Crest, isn't there, welcoming that historic district?
There is I saw one the other day on, I guess it's onto Princeton, Harvard, where it's.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. That's
I think
nice.
they're pretty new, yes.
Okay. So this is a fairly large district comparably?
This district that we're talking about tonight is 68 properties, is 66 homes along Laird,
Okay.
including the two circles that are off of Laird between 13th and 15th East. This is not the first time that the Landmark Commission has seen this. I took this through the process 2014, 2015, but it also included the north side of 13th South. That was about 90, must have been about 95 properties. So those properties are not included in what we're talking about tonight. Yellowcrest National District has the highest concentration of period revival houses in the state of Utah. 63 of the 66 homes in the proposed district are considered contributing to 95%, which is good. We are asking you tonight to change the status rating on 3 properties. This was outlined in your staff report. These properties were surveyed with SHPO staff, and SHPO staff recommended that the rating be changed on these properties. The reasons for which are also in your staff report. And if you want to ask me about those when we get further along, please feel free. This process, this application was submitted in January. It's a very long process. And right now we are at number 7, where we're talking about commission meetings. So we are meeting with you this evening. We are meeting with the Planning Commission next Wednesday.
Okay.
And after that happens, then we will send out a public support ballot to all the property owners on that, within the proposed district. Each property owner has 1 vote. After that ballot is tallied by the city recorder's office, then it will proceed to city council for a decision.
Did you said this came up before in 2015-ish,
Yeah, it was about 2015.
and it didn't pass because
If I remember correctly, I think it was withdrawn.
what?
Does that sound right? Oh. So it then it didn't pass the vote.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
So again, based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, it's planning staff's opinion that the proposed local historic district meets the applicable standards and therefore recommends that you, the Historic Landmark Commission, forward to the City Council a recommendation to approve the request. We also request that, and we also recommend that you approve the changes to the 2005 Yellowcrest Reconnaissance Level Survey as proposed. That, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I've got one. I think it's step number 4, and that at least 33%. Yeah, there you go. 33% of property owner signatures must consent to apply. Was it greater than that?
It was 66%.
Wow.
Okay. And I, perhaps a dumb question, but just a little bit self-serving. So, questions concerning roofing, windows, doors, brick painting, all of this has been explained. That in a historic neighborhood, there's some additional requirements. Everyone knows and understands those.
Yeah, we've sent out information. So this whole process was changed because of changes made with the state legislature. And this process has become much more informative early in the process. And we've sent out information to all the property owners. And one in particular is kind of a question and answer sheet. How would this affect my property? What would be the effects?
Yes.
And so we've done that. We've also held a property owners meeting. We held that back in June, where we invited all the property owners to come listen to a presentation about how this could affect their property.
How many showed up?
Of the 68 properties that are in the proposed district, we had 16 owners show up.
Wow, that's awesome. And what
So-
did you tell them they couldn't do?
Hey, Babs.
Yeah.
Can you please scooch closer to your
I'm not
microphone?
sure that the questioning was really about that.
Okay.
There were some questions about that, sure, but
Well, I think the public always wants to know what's the advantage of becoming a historic district.
and discussed. And there were certainly questions about, can I paint my brick? Can I
remodel my bathroom?
can I change
right.
out windows? Can I build a garage in the backyard? Can I do an accessory dwelling unit? Things of that nature.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you.
And I just one last
more?
thing.
Yes.
I have included all of the public comment in the staff report. I got a couple of comments afterwards that I put in your Dropbox. And there was one other thing I wanted to tell you.
Well, if you think
Anyway,
of
it
it,
slipped my mind.
I can tell you as I get older, it'll come back in about 5 minutes. Okay? But then you won't remember what it's relevant to, so it's okay. We have 3 members of the maybe 4 members of the public that would like to speak. But first, one of those is the chair of the Yale Crest Neighborhood Council, Janet Hemming. And with no further ado, go ahead and use either one, whatever works for you, Janet.
Why don't you come closer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we get started in the picking, I was.
You have all the time in the world. Sit down.
Well, Lex said 5 minutes.
Shut up. Sit down.
It's
Okay?
not going to take me 5, but I just wanted to make sure it didn't go over.
Don't worry. Okay. But speak really close in that microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration tonight of a local historic district in Yale Crest called Laird Heights. These homes, the majority from the 1920s and 30s, have stood the test of time and represent rare architectural styles. As stewards of Salt Lake's historic heritage, you are in a unique position to help ensure that this part of the city's past won't be lost. According to Salt Lake's historic preservation codes, your role is to, quote, protect exemplary groupings of historic properties as local historic districts, unquote. Laird Heights not only meets, but exceeds that definition. It conforms with the goals and objectives of the East Bench Master Plan and all of the city's significant planning policies. These homes also meet contributing historic requirements. This morning, I drove down Laird Avenue, as I have many times before, to get another glimpse of the properties in this application. I would urge you to do the same if you have time. They are beautiful, well kept, with structural integrity and exquisite workmanship. Rare features include cone-shaped turrets, sweeping roof lines, leaded windows, half timbering, striated brick, and arched doorways. These Laird Heights homes don't just add charm and value. They aren't just pretty to look at. In many ways, these older homes outperform modern ones. Think plaster versus drywall, wood from old-growth forests versus newer planks, wood versus vinyl windows, craftsmanship versus automation. Approval of the Laird Heights LHD application will give future generations an appreciation of Salt Lake's cultural past. Sustainability is today's new buzzword. Nothing speaks to that better than the historic homes of Laird Heights. The phrase, "they don't build them like they used to," applies here. This LHD request comes with some urgency. More demolitions have occurred in Yale Crest than any other established neighborhood in the state of Utah. 56 in the last 27 years. So much of our historical heritage is already gone. We need protective measures. Secondly, the city is about to approve the Affordable Housing Incentive Plan, which makes all single-family homes eligible for demolition and replacement with a fourplex or other dense housing. Unchecked and with little regard for the factors that make Salt Lake City neighborhoods cohesive and attractive, this could introduce unintended consequences. Salt Lake City already has the lowest number of family housing units of any peer cities in the region. I don't know if you knew that, but it is in the 2023 Housing SLC report that was sent to the Utah State Legislature. Fewer single-family homes may push even more families out of Salt Lake, resulting in more school closures. The Laird Heights Local Historic District would be an honored addition to the 6 this commission has previously approved. I urge you to vote in favor of this designation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and let's see. Next would be Hugh, is it Bunker? Hi, are you Hugh?
Chair Delay.
Yes.
I was just going to say, we need
Probably
to hear
should have
from the applicant.
the applicant as well. That's what we were just discussing. Yes, let's have the applicant up next, and that applicant is, that's right, Kelly. Thank you. MacLear. What kind of name is that? MacLear. Is it like Scottish?
Welsh.
Welsh. Very good. That's my middle name, Wales. I love that.
You're going to hear a lot of repetition, which means we didn't, get together and compare notes.
Oh.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to allow me to come and speak to you today about this important issue. On behalf of the Laird Heights LHD committee, which we actually formed a committee about this issue, I was honored to submit this petition and strongly support the designation of the proposed Laird Heights Local Historic District. Located in the Normandy Heights subdivision in the southwest corner of Yellowcrest, this large tree-lined, mostly beautiful sycamore trees, rolling hill areas contains 66 houses with over 90% considered to be historically contributing, which I believe is one of the biggest historically contributing local historic districts. We were all surprised with that. 6 of those homes are listed on the 2005 Reconnaissance Level Survey for further research. Laird Heights is also listed as the National Register of Historic Places. It contains a variety of architectural types of exceptional and unique beauty, including English cottages, English Tudors, colonial rival, Spanish colonial revival, Dutch colonial, French Norman, bungalows, and early ranch built by highly admired Salt Lake City builders in the 1920s and 30s. The designation of the proposed Laird Heights LHD is consistent with the city policies encouraging preservation and physical structures and cultural history. Notable property owners include city and national politicians, attorneys, insurance, investment, government, and large commercial industry executives, builders, developers, and even an auto enthusiast who made land record speeds, all who were highly influential in the development and prominence of Salt Lake City and in the Intermountain region. In conversations with our Laird Heights neighbors, there is a strong support for the local historic designation. As mentioned, 66% of property owners in the proposed LHD position signed the petition, and that's twofold greater than the 30% required to initiate the city process. The proposed Laird Heights LHD is contiguous and with other designated LHDs within the Normandy Heights subdivision and Yellowcrest, including Normandy Circle, Harvard Heights, and the immediate south over the newly proposed Princeton Heights. It also is one of the biggest things for a lot of the neighbors now is it is really one of the elements, if we became a local historic district, it would really help in the demolition of our neighbors' houses, and that's a really important factor, I believe, now.
Agree.
As neighbors, we all take pride in the uniqueness and charm of our neighborhood. We want to ensure we preserve these attributes and the historical significance Laird Heights contributes to the city. I strongly urge approval of this local historic designation by the Historic Landmarks Commission, and thank you so much for your consideration. Did I get the wrong committee?
No. We often say
I
hysterical.
apologize.
No.
This is my first time doing
You did
this.
great. Okay, stay there. We want to see if anybody has any questions for you of the applicant. And yes.
I have a question. What percentage do you know of the area we're speaking of is owner occupied?
Oh,
I don't know total. I mean, I really don't know the number, but I would say the majority of them are owner, very few are rentals.
just
I'm aware of
email
like
me
two.
and I can get that list for you.
Okay.
What kind of home do you live in?
I live in a it is a English tutor
Groovy.
cottage.
Love that. All right, so we don't have any other questions. We're not having any rebuttals or anything, but I do have a couple people that want to comment, so you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. Hugh, we're back to Hugh. I've tried 3 times, Hugh, to bring you up, and okay. Is it Bunker?
Bunker?
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah, I wanted to stand so I could say I rise in favor of this
All right, then.
designation. And I don't have anything else to add except my heartfelt support.
Groovy. All right. And then we have Tony and Cleone Romney, and you want to come up together? They live on Laird Avenue, as does Hugh, and who else? Who else lived on Laird Avenue? Well, obviously our applicant. Janet doesn't. Janet.
Architectural nerd back.
Yay. Okay. What kind of home do you live in?
Dutch
Oh.
colonial. It's the one that if you look at it, it looks like a Dutch hat.
Uh-huh.
It's just, and we bought it within the last year and 2 months. Bought it specifically to be in this area.
Huh.
So we're very much in support. And your percentages would actually be a little bit higher than 66% had we been able to vote, but we were out of town when the votes came through and we didn't get back until after they. So,
Yeah.
anything, dear?
Wholeheartedly support the effort.
Go team.
Thank you. And thank you for your consideration and your time.
Absolutely. Well, and I was just questioning staff. If this were to pass, that would make us have 14 historic districts in the city. Yay for us. So much power we have here. All right. Thank you. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Oops. Oops. Okay. Not going to close. All righty. Go ahead. And this would be Eric.
Foot fell asleep.
Is that P-O-V?
I-L-U-S.
I-L-U-S.
Yeah, Eric Pavlis. I live at 1428 Laird Avenue. Before you ask, I live in English tutor.
Nice.
Jake Garn used to live in my house, and a couple other people that are of prominence in the city. So I'm totally in favor of the historical local district. I thank Kelly for doing it. I was around when it failed the first time. One of my biggest concerns is preservation and demolition, which I'm hoping this will help prevent. It doesn't fully prevent it with the ADUs and some other things, but that's one of my concerns. I just wanted to raise some concerns or thoughts since I was going through this process that you should be aware of, because me as a homeowner, I did a lot of research. And so Lex did, I emailed Lex, he helped me through a few things, but I can tell you our city is behind a lot of other historical cities in documentation for the homeowners. City of Denver is a perfect example. Savannah, Charleston, and Richmond out east. They have
What do you mean by documentation?
So I'm going to tell you. So they have websites that will show you the homes and what you can do to windows, doors, the facade, the fascia, landscaping. We have no pictures to show you what you can and can't do. So my question, I moved in my house in 2000. The windows were replaced right before I moved in. There were 26 windows replaced. I don't want to have to go out and replace all my, they don't conform. They would never meet your standards, most likely. But if I have to replace one, it's going to stick out probably like a sore thumb. And, you know, I have to go through a permitting process so it gets documented that these things were put in before I bought a house in 2000. I don't think that's really fair. There's a lot of, it's nebulous on garages. What's the side of the house? What's viewable from the street? I'm going to tell you, all these other cities, they have very good pictures and diagrams on angles and distances. So I'm just going to tell you, I think we can do better.
Sure.
If you want more historical districts, we can do a lot better. The other thing is, someone asked about occupancy. I can tell you 90% plus of them all are owner occupied. The other comment I have is we can do better, and I don't give a lot of credence, and you shouldn't, on public comments and letters attached. I'm going to tell you, I went through that packet meticulously. 88% of all the letters in support of the district are not people that live on the street in the district. I'm a homeowner. I'm going to live by these rules. I'm going to have to pay more to maintain a house to a certain set of standards. And so I think more credence should be given to people that live in the impacted historical district. I went through them. They're in the surrounding area. Some people are 2 miles away. Why do they have a say and a support on something that impacts me? Just because they think the street's pretty, the trees are pretty and stuff. I'm the impacted homeowner, not these people. So I think you should change your process and maybe segregate the public comments to people that live in the area and people that are outside the area. That's just a comment.
Sure.
Okay? But I am totally in favor of this. Move it on. Let's get the vote moving.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep, thanks.
Anyone else want to pop up? Okay, well then let's close the public hearing, and commissioners, you want to commiserate? Big word. Thoughts, questions? You gotta talk in the thing.
Something can't, this is a good idea, but Princeton is looking pretty frightening. If it is your neighborhood.
Wait, Princeton is frightening?
There is a lot of work being done that is non-compliant, that they're changing roof lines, yanking things out, making some pretty egregious changes, so.
Cindy, get on it.
Oh, yeah. That's all. There are some really troubling changes going on in that neighborhood that, you know, I'm all about stopping. That's all.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? Michaela?
I was just going to say,
Can't hear you.
I was going to say until this is adopted, there won't be any historic review on those changes.
Okay. All right, so
I have maybe
go ahead.
This might come out of left field, but I'm wondering how we as a commission should weigh the intent of the affordable housing incentive and whether that should have an impact on
just
decision process regarding this. Like I don't know. The document returns again and again to this as a motivation for the creation of the historic district, that the affordable housing incentive will precipitate more demolition. I don't know how to weigh those two things against each other. The architectural character of this particular single-family residential district versus the planning commission, the city council's intent in providing the affordable housing incentive.
Most people wouldn't consider this neighborhood affordable housing, though.
And that affordable, now I feel like I'm screaming, but you can hear me. The affordable housing incentives haven't been adopted by council yet.
Yeah. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because the document mentioned it so many times.
Mentions it so many times, and we heard about it at property owner meetings. We talked about land values. It's cited by a lot of individuals. I wouldn't say that there are other individuals that signed on and are proponents that aren't worried about the affordable housing incentives. But it doesn't mean that the affordable housing incentives aren't going to apply if adopted. However, if this does become a local historic district, it is in itself, as you can see in the report, incredibly historic and if there's a prime candidate in Salt Lake City, definitely Princeton. And so my advice to you is to look at the standards for adopting a local historic district, to not have to try to make that policy call on policy that hasn't been adopted by the council.
Sure.
Does that help?
Yeah,
It does.
Okay.
that's very wise. No wonder you hold that job. Good
And
job.
just for the benefit of the public as well, we don't necessarily, I take the point that maybe there's a way that we can consolidate public comments, but we still get public comments and we don't know if there's no requirement that we won't take your public comment if you don't put what your address is. Everyone is entitled to comment, but as Lex had mentioned in his presentation, this is a very robust, grassroots, on purpose, local historic district process, right? With all of these meetings, and at the end, that ballot where that property owner truly gets to go through all of the education, ask city folks all of the questions, and then at the end of the day, really check where they stand with the designation.
And I appreciate that. I think that's really great that everyone has taken action and you know, agency in the preservation of their neighborhood. I guess I appreciated the comment regarding, you know, resources that might be provided at you know, on a website or something like that at the city level to be able to expedite maybe that process, the process of activism and agency. I was really delighted to hear about the RFP because I feel like we shouldn't rely quite so much on the individual actions of residents or interested parties. And yeah, I think that's something that we should, I don't know, this is my reflective moment of being on the commission for 2 years. Like, this is something I'm thinking about, like whether we should put in place more processes to whether it's reconnaissance level surveys or something else, to expedite the process so we don't rely so much on individuals. Because this is like, I think this is the first historic district I've seen on the commission. And I feel like that should tell us something. Like, over 2 years, they don't happen that often, but you know, maybe we're relying too much on public initiative. Does that make any sense?
That totally makes sense,
Yeah.
and there's a
Okay.
whole lot of history there with
What?
the legislature. and
What?
There's so much history there to go into, even when a number of Yieldcrest local historic districts, like the process was created from the legislature to make it very, very grassroots, rather than the mayor or the city council initiating local historic districts.
Yeah.
So there's a
When
lot
was
of history.
When was the last historic district put in place?
2017?
And that was for,
2017.
was that for,
Normandy?
okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, I think we're done with this. So shall we go ahead and get a motion here? You did it last time.
Yep.
You need a motion sheet. Voila.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, testimony and information presented, I move that the commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council to designate a new local historic district for the Yieldcrest Laird Heights as proposed.
We have a second?
I second that.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll move to a vote, and we'll start with Mike.
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I say aye. Passes unanimously.
Okay, there's actually,
Oh,
there's actually
what?
2 motions there.
Second motion.
Yeah.
Don't get all excited yet. All right.
There's a second one. Go ahead and read that.
All right, for the second motion, based upon the information presented, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to adopt the changes to the building ratings from the 2005 reconnaissance level survey as noted in attachment D of the staff report dated 9/7/2023.
Great. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
A second. We have discussion. All right, we shall move to a vote. Emily?
Aye.
Michael Abramson?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote. It is unanimous, so you can really applaud now. Thank you all for being involved in this process, and we are going to move into work session now, so anybody that was hanging out for that is welcome to move on. So, our work session tonight is regarding the bamboo multifamily new construction at approximately 602 and 612 East, 300 South, and 321 South, 600 East. Our planner tonight is Sarah, and the presenter is Tom Jacob. And something else written in here. Sebastian.
We've lost our quorum.
We lost our, what? We lost our quorum. Hold, please. Hold, please.
Yeah.
We're waiting for a commissioner. What happened? In the bathroom?
It's just,
Mumbled something. Okay.
Maybe
Hold,
we could
please, and then
call
we'll.
for a short break.
Work break?
Yeah, just a short break.
Let's have a 5-minute break. Thank you. a work session, and we're going to be talking about bamboo multifamily new construction at approximately 602, 612 East, 3rd South, and 321 South, 600 East. Our planner is Sarah. Our presenter is Tom, with someone else named Sebastian. Is that correct? Okay, so it's just Tom. Or is it Thom?
Thomas without the S.
Groovy. All right, so Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As you stated, this is a work session, and the request is for new construction approval for a 38-unit multifamily dwelling in the Central City Historic District, and the property is zoned RMF 35. This orients you on the map as to where the property is located within the Central City Historic District. The proposal also includes remodel of the existing non-contributing dwelling that's located on the property that's to the east of the three properties. They are requesting a modification for a reduction in the required front yard setback. And then separate from this request is a plan development request for use of the density provision to change the non-conforming commercial use on the properties at 602 East 300 South and 321 South 600 East to a permitted residential use. And so tonight we're seeking feedback from the Commission on the proposal, and that includes the size and massing of the proposed building, the fenestration, and engagement with the street. And just to give you a little bit closer look of where the project's located, it's located at the southeast intersection of 300 South and 600 East, and there are 3 properties that are included in it. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background information. The property at 602 East 300 South was determined to be non-contributing in the city's most recent historic survey, and that was confirmed with an administrative interpretation that was completed last year. And so demolition applications for non-contributing properties are reviewed administratively, and they've been approved for both this property and the property at 321 South 600 East. And the property at 612 East 300 South is considered contributing to the Central City Historic District, and there are minor changes proposed to that building. So this is the site plan for the proposed multifamily building, along with the contributing structure at 612 East, and then the changes to the property at 614. And I'll just briefly go over the proposed elevations and then turn it over to the applicant to talk about it further. This is the floor plan for the multifamily building, the first floor plan. And then the elevations, the top is the west elevation, so this is what would face 600 East. And then the bottom is the east elevation. And then on this slide, the north elevation, this is what would face 300 South. And then on the bottom is the south elevation. And then this is the rear buildings. This is the non-contributing structure that's located to the rear of 612. And so they're proposing to add a second story that would have the similar materials as the multifamily building, and then the other portion of the building would be bicycle parking. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the applicant to talk about the project further.
Great. Not the proposed street view. Do you have an actual street view? Tom? Tom?
Yes.
Do you have an actual street view?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, you mean a photograph?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't. So we are fresh off the Central
Right.
City Community Council meeting, and it was very favorable. They had good response to it, and so I'm kind of taking that momentum with me into this workshop. My name is Tom Jacob. I'm a sole practitioner architect. Been practicing in town for the last 20 years. Have done a handful of projects in historic districts, and but this is a larger scale building for me. And I'm representing Sebastian and Catalina, who are the owners of Elingua Language School. They have occupied the building at the corner at 602 East for the past 8 years. And they have, become part of the community, during that duration. So just to kind of start off, this is a general rendering from the corner of 300 South and 600 East. This is kind of like our, major view, kind of look of the proposed building. And, if there's one thing I could say tonight that I feel proud about is that this building is going to be built by locals and owned and operated by locals. We are not an outside developer who has been, which is a pattern that we're seeing a lot in the city. And my hope is this to be considered somewhat of a missing middle project where, even though it is kind of a 3-story building, and we'll kind of get into the precedent of, the pattern of the development in that neighborhood historically and why this is what it is. But, the emphasis is the fact that, we are a local builder. So, as Sarah explained, we're at the corner of 300 South, and can I point here and it shows up? Yeah, 300 South, 600 East. There are currently 3 lots, and they will be joined into one final lot. And we were required to do a setback analysis and a height analysis of both block faces. In addition, we have provided a number of images that I'll kind of scroll through here quickly of the coexistence of, historic apartment buildings within our district and their interrelationship with single-family residential buildings within there. So just, to say it very briefly, there is this thing that we're accustomed to in terms of scale where you do get these 3 to 4 story apartment buildings adjacent to single-story structures. So kind of zooming out a little bit, I have kind of 3 points. The first one comes from the master plan that we dug into as part of the beginning point of the design process. And the kind of underlying message of the master plan is the desire to reestablish housing within this East Downtown district. In fact, it is reinforced by the primary component of the plan development where there is an allowed exception. I think Sarah brought this up, is that when you convert a non-conforming business use to a residential use within this district, you're exempt from the density requirements. So that has enabled us to proceed with a little bit more denser housing design for this project. Secondly, in terms of the nature of the block face, from my interpretation of reading 600 East versus 300 South, is that 600 East is, generally comprised of commercial buildings, 2-story brick, relatively square massing, kind of frontal facing. But 300 South is different in that regard. It's kind of larger scale, 4 square, Victorian. I think our corner building was Colonial Revival. So it's a mix of that era from, the early 1900s on. But the key word I want to emphasize is that it's considered really, from my point of view, a transitional zone between the high density of 400 South, where we're getting the mass transit development, and moving back into the neighborhood. We're kind of at the crook of the elbow between those 2 zones. So my perception of it is that this is a good place for a medium kind of size building to fit in there that is common, that you'll see. So lastly is kind of goes to my survey that I've conducted in terms of showing 3 to 4 story buildings and roomy houses that were a pattern for the last 100 years and suffered for quite a long time because they were, the business district started to slowly move closer and closer into the residential area. A lot were demolished over time. Hence, that's why the city has this exception within their plan development process where, they're trying to encourage residential housing in this district. So just kind of quickly, just kind of illustrating, the nature of the massing, through the district. And this is just exclusive to the central city. You can see this kind of, sprinkled throughout East Downtown area. There are a lot of great examples of 3 to 4 story brick buildings that we're kind of trying to draw upon on this design that we're putting in front of you. And this is along 700 South.
senior housing. So this is just a record of the current buildings. So we have the corner building, 602 East, and then 321 South. These two buildings will be demolished, and I think it's probably easier to kind of see in these comparison photos. This is a demolition plan showing the buildings that will be removed.
Parking. Can you address parking?
Sure. Right now?
Is that on here?
Yeah.
The one that you're showing me right now?
Yep. On the right-hand side, there are,
Cursor. Give me a cursor here.
14 parking stalls that are part of the project.
Where are they on this map is what I'm trying to figure out.
Here. So there are 4 stalls here, 1 handicapped and 3, so 3 stalls, and then there are 6 stalls here.
So there's 38 units,
Mm-hmm.
and you have how many stalls?
We have 14.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And this is all within the zoning ordinance. We're not asking for any exception. Mhm.
However, that's a huge impact on this neighborhood.
It is, yeah.
And a huge impact on parking on the street, which is quite hard.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, it's like, are we creating a Chick-fil-A problem here?
Mm-hmm. It's possible. It's interesting, the 2 meetings we've had with the city, different districts, the city councils, 0 concern was expressed in terms of parking.
I don't think any of them live in this neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on.
Okay. So, because we're next to mass transit and because we are also participating in a bicycle program, we are allowed, and each unit is allowed a half stall per unit, and it's just the calculus that the city, we're just abiding by the rules that are there. We're not asking for any exception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just to kind of get to the building a little bit, it's an L-shaped building, and essentially it's actually broken down into 3 major masses. This front mass fronts 300 South, and then this middle mass, which is, the primary entrance is here, which is defined by an interior courtyard that you saw in that first rendering. And then the second 2 masses also front 600 East and 600 East. So there's a lot of eyes on the street. And each unit is, provides a balcony for its tenant. Maybe one last thing to point out, we're going to do a small addition to 612 in the rear, just administrative, just to add more square footage to clean up this, the interior of 612. And then, as Sarah mentioned, we'll be converting half of the unit on 614 into a bicycle storage. It will contain 26 bicycle storage areas, and then a small 2-story dwelling unit that's currently there. This is the street face. So, here 600 East, and then the second line is 300 South. So you can kind of see, the major difference here with, again, along 600 East, the kind of blocky type commercial buildings in relationship to our building, just looking at a pure diagrammatic view of it. Versus on 300 South, they're kind of larger estates that have been, built over the years as part of the historic district. That is the character. So, that's kind of just a basic look of how the massing occurs along the block face. So the units, there will be a total of 38 units. They are micro units, and they will have a bathroom, a kitchen, and a pull-out Murphy bed with a balcony for each unit.
They're rentals, not
Rentals.
for sale.
Correct. Yep. And then this is the single family or the single dwelling unit here with the bicycle storage. So this essentially repeats itself for 3 stories. Actually, I want to step back to the site plan, because I think there's kind of the most important thing to emphasize here is that we're asking for very little in terms of exception as part of the plan development process. Normally, you're able to kind of write your own setbacks and, density and height and so on and so forth. All we're asking for in this process is a setback exception on 600 East. It is still set back around 14 feet 8, I believe, down here from the property. So the exception is 3 feet 10. And then but otherwise, just following the zoning ordinance, it's 20 feet, which is honored at this corner building. And then 10 feet is only required in the front, but we're setting it back an additional 14, 11, I believe. Sorry, it's hard to read. So the dotted line on both faces show the average setback of the block face. So you can kind of see that in comparison. So there's kind of this mix of, you know, considering the setback, historic setback, and also just looking at the zoning setback. So Sarah briefly went through the elevations. This is the primary facade that will, on the north elevation, you know, just kind of the single facade will face 300 south. And then down below on the west elevation, that's our primary facade that will front 600 east and will be the primary entrance to the new building. A few building sections. Some other features that we've been working with the planners on, not only in terms of the raised courtyard and landscape area, but an additional stoop, establishing a foundation line, so there is given a certain presence and hierarchy to the street, especially down in this lower end. It's approximately 3 to 4 feet above grade, and an increased depth in terms of the patios that we're going to provide. Those are, and some other aspects of it, I think in terms of the massing is concerned, again, there's kind of, you know, the building is kind of, even though it's like one kind of large facade, it is broken down with setbacks in the relief within the facade in kind of a secondary and tertiary way. Meaning that, like on the west facade, there's this outer facade, and then there's the balcony, and then there's stair cores that are also broken in addition. So it has layers of massing that have been taken into consideration. Here are a few street views. This is the first one's along 600 East looking south, looking at the main entrance there, and then on the opposite side, kind of looking in the opposing direction on 600 East looking north. So you can kind of get a sense of that. Then again, kind of a zoom back view, kind of considering the adjacent buildings on 600 East on this left-hand photo, and then here's a view from 300 South, kind of looking at the juxtaposition between the new apartment and the smaller residential home. Then lastly, this is something we just kind of threw in recently, but this is the bicycle storage area, the black shed that will be accessible to the residents, and then this small dwelling unit.
It's really going to be black?
Yes. It's hidden behind all the buildings. It will not be really perceived from the street.
Yeah. Will it be air conditioned, using more air conditioning because it's black? Is this environmentally a good idea?
Good question. I didn't take that into consideration. So I imagine we wouldn't have to heat it. It's just like a garage, basically a shed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
And correct me again, how many total parking spaces are there?
We have 14 parking spaces that are provided. 3 are on street.
Okay, so of the 38 units, that gives us 24 potential extra cars that'll be just around that corner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is looking towards kind of future way of living, future development, and the whole point, as far as what I gather from hearing Sarah had to say, it's either you continue with your pattern of providing everyone with a parking stall, or if you want to truly encourage public transit, and the fact that the city invested billions of dollars into the light rail and development along 400 South, that this is in a sense a way to encourage people to not own a car, and actually this is, out of all the places in Salt Lake, it's very ideal for non-car living. It's within a few blocks of grocery stores, restaurants. Liberty Park is just a short jaunt down the way. Somebody could live a very healthy and happy life in this neighborhood with, traveling in very short distances. So it's not like you are living up remotely in the avenues and have to, go down East Street at 50 miles per hour to get to your job every morning. It's like people are, they're in the urban environment, and actually I could end on the fact that the community council we went to, they were very excited to see a high quality building being proposed in their neighborhood. They see that as a positive to bringing up the level of architecture in their place.
Chair Delay, may I make a comment? If they meet the zoning ordinance with regard to the parking regulations, it's not really within our authority
Nope.
to make a
Just
judgment
wondering.
call.
I just happen to be in that neighborhood constantly, and I personally have problems parking in that neighborhood. So it's just, pardon me for looking forward, but remember, I was the one that did not like Chick-fil-A, and I don't want that area. There's still some really precious homes in that area, but to turn into parking hell. And you're feeding in from that little mini mall there that has all the restaurants there, and lots of homeless are on those two corners right there. So it's just me. I can't change the rules, me personally. I mean, I know that we encourage mass transit. However, mass transit is not going up in 20, 30, 40% of usership. It's nice to say we encourage it, but they're not doing it, and they're still owning cars. But maybe the price point on this might be more affordable, and people might not have cars, so I can cross my fingers on that. I don't have any issue with this at all. It's just a generic, this is reminding us of the rules. Thank you. Anything else from you? Any questions of the applicant? All right, then go ahead and stand down, and we can provide some, yeah, go ahead. Great.
Just mostly clarifications. So you are representing the property owner on the corner of 6th and 3rd, correct?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm a little confused about this individual structure. Why is that one separate?
The bike?
The bike shed and then individual property. So is that what's going on there?
So that is actually an existing dwelling unit that we will be remodeling, and partial of it will just remain as a dwelling unit, and the other part will serve the community and the multifamily housing for their bicycle storage.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question. Can you go back about 6 slides to the slide that said reestablish housing?
Oh, way back?
Nope, one more. Yeah, it may have been your first slide.
Right here. Yeah.
Okay. Just a comment. I agree with all of the words of wanting to reestablish housing throughout the East Downtown neighborhood. I think that's absolutely laudable. I look at the detailing of the house that's shaded behind there, and I see some similarities where you have very well defined entrance. It's inset, but when I look at this elevation, even though it's clouded, you've got either stone or concrete lintels. There's 3/1 windows with large center window with a doublet on each side. There's brick detailing at the upper. There's crenellated up at the parapet level, and there's just variety on this elevation. And there's enough variety, and there's enough character, and and you're an architect. I'm not telling you how to design it, but I'm just comparing the level of detail on the fenestration and on the face of the buildings themselves, and you compare it to all of the other precedent images that you showed in the neighborhood, and they seem to be compatible. And just in terms of the level of complexity that happens, you know, right to left, top to bottom. I think that's important to take cues from, that there's in this historic neighborhood, and yes, it is a transitional zone, but it's not in the suburbs. You know, it's not, you know, in the north-south suburbs that we have. It's in a historical neighborhood, and so I think there's a number of cues to take from its neighbors that would be important to incorporate into the proposed design.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way of putting it. I wouldn't have been this nice, because I'm saying it looks
Why?
like an Amazon warehouse to me. It needs some charm and personality to fit into the neighborhood. Yeah.
I see. Can I respond?
I have
Or-
some questions about the affordability and
Yep.
the size of these 38 units.
Okay. Sure.
Actually, we
don't do
shouldn't be asking
affordability.
questions about affordability. We can talk about the size of the units, but
Okay.
You said
Thank you.
studio size, like
Yeah, studio, 350
Square feet?
approximately. Yeah.
that's normal.
Thank you, Michaela.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Can we have a conversation about Mike's comment, or is it just I just receive your comment and
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
yeah,
Help you.
sure, of course.
this
Okay.
is work session.
To me, it's a very good comment. I've thought a lot about building in historic neighborhoods, building new. And something I've taken through past projects is that, you know, we don't want to really match history. We want to be of this era. And, you know, this is a relatively minimal design, but I think I can counter with the lack of detail through the expression of solid void and the spaces that the patios add to the articulation of the facade. It's very different than, you know, you look at these buildings were relatively, you know, mass buildings that they would just break down through ornamentation. And often they'd only like treat the front facade. The sides and the rear were relatively banal, you know. So we're in a corner, and the challenge is kind of dealing with it's a three-dimensional problem, and how to front the face, give people a sense of connection through the balcony, and you know, through kind of just bold, clean lines, but then using the brick and the cornice and the base as just the kind of echoing back to the historic era. And I think that's something that could be developed a little further to maybe kind of meet you in the middle of what you're trying to express. But, you know, it's my intent to not make this look historic in a way. It's to be compatible with the neighborhood, but have its own identity. That's kind of like how I've approached new construction in historic districts before. And it's I think there's a, like, if you compare this to the this is the preservation project, but the Beehive that we saw, that presentation, very, very light touch. You know, they just kind of were making everything function and bringing things up back to the beauty. Nice idea, but this is kind of a different realm in historic designing historic areas. And I think my intent was to, you know, be of this era. You know, to not build like we used to 100 years ago, but build like we build now, because honestly, builders can't really build like this. We don't build the same way. That's my take on it.
I have a question about why the building on the corner is not a contributing structure. It's, yeah, I mean, except for its
Sarah
ugly
can answer
porch.
that for you, if you like.
I can speak
Why
to
is the
that.
building on the corner not part of, why is that not contributing? It's of the same age as the rest of the street.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah,
for its
I can
porch.
speak to that a little bit, and we have brought this up a couple of times. This is one of the examples that got brought up when we presented the overlay text amendment changes. So this property was identified in the survey as a non-contributing building. When the applicant initially approached staff with an application for for this project, staff looked at it and thought, we might actually disagree with that and want to do some additional research into the contributing status of that property, or the historic status. And so we looked into the research and did an administrative interpretation and found that the structure is no longer contributing. So we just confirmed the status that had already been identified in the initial survey. Although the age is the same as some of the older buildings in the district, it has had several alterations. So much so that SHPO indicated that regardless of if they were to reverse every single alteration, like if they were to reinstate the porch, fix a number of things, there is nothing that they can do to the stucco that they installed over the brick, and SHPO would never consider it contributing. And that was kind of the, there was a number of things, but it's just the combination of all of the alterations that have been done to the property that deem it non-contributing.
And I was in that building when it was sold the last time, and I would say it was just a mess. And it is a mess now. Yeah. I mean, it does have little bits of charm in it, but yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, well then we'll
I don't think I have a question, but I want to kind of come to the defense of this project, I guess, a little bit. I think calling this a missing middle is really appropriate. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it'll make a great addition to the neighborhood. My only hesitation is a really subtle thing, and it has to do with the glass railings. Because those are so close to the face of the brick. I feel like the renderings are maybe a little misleading, and it feels like they might be a little glossier than they appear. And that I feel like might not be in keeping with the character of the district. There are a lot of things I like here. I think the way that you articulated the use of mass and the play with mass as a way of incorporating historical architecture or referencing historical architecture, I think is really excellent. I like the incorporation of the subtle cornice at the top. I think that's like enough of a cue for me that this is aware of its place in the city. So I'm pretty convinced by this, with the exception of the railing. So I don't know. Is there anything you would want to say in response to that about the railings?
That was my preference, to put a metal railing.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said that, but the owner was insistent on it, so I put it forward for them.
Okay.
But I think a nice ornate metal rail could help with that kind of fine detail that maybe is lacking, possibly, because it's. I
agree.
Yeah.
So staff, what are the next options for the applicant now that they've come here for the work session?
I'd just like to ask the applicant if you got clarity from the Landmark Commission tonight before you come back.
I don't think we're giving him much suggestions.
Well, I thought the memo was incredibly thorough in terms of its response to all of the various characteristics and recommendations. So I was pretty convinced by that as well. I do have a subtle thing there as well. In a section where you were talking about the use of durable materials.
Yeah.
You list fiber cement as a durable material. I'm not sure that
oh really
necessarily does anyone over there have perspective on that? Fiber cement as durable material.
Accents.
Is it? But is
cement
can we characterize that as a durable material? We can.
It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Swiss Pearl, something like that material.
I don't know the brand name, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Similar to GFRC, which is also like allowed in a historic district as well. So it's kind of a integral color. It's not painted.
Any other suggestions for the applicant?
Comment.
Yeah.
I like seeing the setbacks. That's some of the things I'm missing in some of the newer construction where the city doesn't allows for less of a setback. So it's nice to see that, and that you didn't push the boundaries there, and the fact that you didn't push the other boundaries like we've seen some other projects looking to absolutely maximize to the to the nth degree is refreshing. to Mike's comments about the perhaps lack of style. I'm not sure that would be the word they would use, but looking at this in a historic district, but understanding that it's not a historic building and that you don't want it to look like an historic building.
Right.
So trying to find that balance, I just want to say I appreciate that dilemma there. I think Mike has, pointed out some different features, and I think you've said I've intentionally kept it this way. Things have to change at some point in time. So I feel for the simplicity within the historic district.
Thank you.
Anything else? Great. So applicant can step down. Thank you very much. And at this point in time, do we have any other business? Then our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, commissioners.